I've been single most of my life. However, I've used apps like Tinder or Badoo just for fun for a long time. Have I met some weird people? Yes. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened in February of 2014. It was the dead of winter, the time of year when these apps are perhaps most useful if you're just looking for casual fun when you can't have fun outside. I was using the app Badoo, and at any given moment I would be messaging at least 5 different girls, only because I know 9 out of 10 conversations would end up dying. One conversation kept going strong, however. The girl's name was Maria. Every time I'd hear that triple note ding and a notification from Badoo saying Maria sent you a new message, I'd actually get a little excited. I asked if she was down to hang out tonight. She wrote back, "Yeah," and asked for my address. I gave it to her without hesitation. She said she'd be right back. I said, "Wait, give me your number so we could text," but she didn't respond. After a few minutes, it said she was offline. The app did that when someone wasn't active for a few minutes, so I figured she'd be back soon, and I patiently waited while going back to watching TV. I kept routinely checking the app to see if she came back online, but she stayed offline. An hour passed, and now it was getting a bit late for her to even come over. Plus, I was getting kind of tired, so the idea lost its appeal. I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up early. It was raining outside, and it was still a little dark. I checked the clock, and it was 6:30 in the morning. I was grateful it wasn't like 11 hours when I could get back to sleep. I did, however, pick up my phone to check for any new texts and junk. I saw a few notifications from Badoo, actually. Maria had messaged me a few times. I opened the app as I rubbed my eyes. She said, "Hey, I'm coming now," at like 3 a.m. Then at 3:20 a.m. it said, "I'm here." At 4 a.m. it said, "I'm watching you." I noticed it said she was online too, and then the triple tone sound beeped, meaning I got a new message from her. It said, "How did you sleep?" My heart started to race, and I felt a feeling of unease in my chest and in my head. I immediately looked out the window to see if anyone was hiding in the bushes outside and then shut the blind. I typed back, "Who the hell is this?" 10 seconds later, I got the disturbing message, "Check your closet and find out." I looked across my room to the closet door that I knew was closed last night, the closet door that was now cracked open. I was so shocked I almost couldn't breathe. Then the door pushed open ever so slowly, revealing the dark inside of the closet. I started screaming for my dad. I had to run past the closet to leave my room. As I got to my dad's room to find the bed empty, I had completely forgotten he wasn't home for the weekend. My older brother was home though, and he came rushing to see what the commotion was. I told him to check the closet with me. When we checked the closet, there wasn't a single trace of anyone having been in there. Then a cold breeze hit me, and I realized my stupid self didn't lock my window the night before. Things made a little more sense now. I went to the police station to show the messages on the app in hopes they could track the person, but apparently, it wasn't that easy. I would need court orders and such in order for Badoo to be required to release the information of the user. I refrained from doing anything. However, luckily after a long week of sleeping in fear, nothing happened. I was able to move on with my life. At the time of this story, I had already met a total of 3 people on Match.com. It didn't really work out with 2 of them, and the third one I dated for 4 months. After my breakup, I wanted to take a break from commitment and just find something more casual. So I matched with a girl named Kylie who I got along with decently well on the app. She seemed down to just come over to my apartment and hang out for the night. She showed up about half an hour later and seemed really quiet in person. We hung out in my room in the upstairs of my apartment for most of the night. We just talked for a while with the TV on in the background. There were a bunch of awkward silences, but I did my best to fill them with new conversations. In the back of my mind the whole time I was thinking, are we gonna kiss? Does she expect me to move in for the kiss? How do I go about it? But hours of talking later, I started to realize there was something wrong with this girl. She became increasingly more emotionless. She was staring off across the room, and she'd talk slowly, talking about increasingly deep and dark things. Then she said something surprising. She thanked me for allowing her to sleep over. Apparently, when I said she could come hang out for the night, she meant to literally stay the night. She got off the bed and asked what blanket she could use for the floor. I grabbed a couple of blankets and pillows and made a sort of bed for her on the floor. She thanked me and then laid down on her side, facing away from me. I guess she was ready to go to sleep. I turned off the TV and closed my eyes. We didn't say a single word to each other, and I have to admit it was very awkward. I fell asleep probably half an hour after shutting the TV. When I woke randomly in the middle of the night, I sat up and looked down at the floor and was able to see that Kylie didn't appear to be laying on the floor anymore. I flipped on the lamp and looked around the room. She wasn't anywhere, actually. But just then, I heard a voice downstairs. It sounded like it could be Kylie. All the walls in my apartment are paper thin, so noise travels quite easily throughout it. I quietly left my room and stood at the top of the stairs, listening for what Kylie could be saying. All the lights upstairs were off, but she was talking in a low voice. I just couldn't tell for sure what exactly she was saying. I figured she was on the phone with someone, but still, I went downstairs to check. I stepped into the dark kitchen, and there she was. But she wasn't on the phone. She was just creepily sitting in one of the chairs facing the wall. She seemed to still be muttering to herself. I was frozen. All I could say was, "Kylie?" She turned her head to me slowly, looked at me for a few seconds, then turned back to face the wall. I went upstairs quickly to my room and crawled into my bed to call my dad. I had to call at least 3 times before he finally picked up, obviously sounding concerned. I told him in a quiet panic that some random girl from online was staying the night, and now she was sitting in my kitchen, muttering to herself like a crazy person. He sounded confused as hell but told me to call 911 if she seemed like she was having some kind of episode to safely get her out of there. Then I looked up and noticed a figure standing by my bedroom door in the dark. It was Kylie. All I saw was the outline of her skinny body. She stood there for maybe 10 seconds. All I heard was my dad on the other end of the phone saying hello over and over. The next thing I saw was the silhouette of Kylie at my door suddenly charging at me in my bed as she began to scream. She lunged at me and put her hands around my throat trying to choke me. However, I was able to quickly overpower her and hold her down against the bed. I screamed at my dad to call the cops. I was able to drag the insane girl downstairs by the time the cops came. The cops took her away to fill out a few documents. I think it's safe to say that you should always meet people from websites and apps in a safe public place first. After breaking up with my first girlfriend when I was 21, I had been single for about a year. It was the first time I had been single in years, so it took some getting used to again. Eventually, I decided it was time to get back into the dating scene, so I started downloading a bunch of dating apps. One of the apps I downloaded was OkCupid, which was the one I used the most. I vibed the most with one girl I matched with named Brenna. Based on her interests and biography, she was into a lot of things I was into. She was a very pretty, light-skinned black girl. We had talked for a while and agreed that I would pick her up at her place to go out and get food. I pulled up to her house on the west side of town at 6:30. It was about 10 minutes after sunset, so it was really getting dark. I texted Brenna, and she took a while to answer. I sat in my car, actually staring at the conversation for a while, waiting for the texting bubble to come up. When it finally did, she responded saying, "Hey, sorry about that, my brother's gonna meet you outside. He's being really annoying and protective." I showed her how upset I was and how much I didn't want to have to meet her brother, but she just kept saying, "Sorry, he's forcing me." I saw the front door of the house I was parked in front of open, and a guy came out walking over to the driveway while looking at my car. I got out to go over and meet him, realizing he towered over me. Another thing I quickly noted was that his skin was significantly darker than Brenna's, to the point that they wouldn't even seem related at all. He shook my hand and introduced himself as Will. There didn't seem to be anything off-putting about him at first glance, and he seemed friendly enough. He started going on about how he just wanted to make sure I was a stand-up guy who was about to take out his sister. We talked for a little and he seemed normal enough, I guess. He finally asked me to come inside to meet Brenna. He led me into the house and shut the door behind me. He told me to wait right there in the living room while he went upstairs to get Brenna. As he went upstairs, I looked into the living room to realize there were two men sitting on the couch, both giving me a certain kind of look I just didn't like. I said, "What's up?" to them. One of them just slightly nodded his head, but just barely. Will, from upstairs, called down that he was trying to find Brenna, which was odd. I turned to look at the room adjacent to the living room, which was the dining room. To my surprise, there was another man sitting at the dining room table, also staring at me. Instinctively, I stepped back and reached for the doorknob without even turning my back to the three men. One of them screamed, "Grab him!" as they saw me reach for the door. At that point, I flung the door open and ran to my car. They weren't far behind. In fact, I made it into my car with only maybe a second to spare before they were outside my doors, kicking and hitting my windows trying to break them. I was able to drive away down the block, but keep in mind this was on a public residential road. I have no idea how it didn't cause more of a scene out on the street. I made it home to tell my mom and dad what happened, still out of breath. They weren't shocked and almost didn't believe it, and they recommended I call the police. I did. I reported the house and the incident to the police. One of the neighbors vouched for my story anonymously because they saw the group attacking my car when I escaped. Police arrested 3 of the 4 men I saw in the house, one of them being Will, or whatever his real name was. The other guy couldn't be found or identified. I didn't stop using dating apps after that. I was just a lot more cautious from there on.